If you haven't watched this video, you can go check it out. This video compares like the turning circle of a 12-meter single-decker bus versus an articulated bus or bendy bus. Actually, is it even 12 meters, but whatever. Okay, so they did say the length of the buses used in this experiment as well as their respective turning circles. So yeah, in the description. So the whole purpose of that test is just to prove that bendy buses can corner just as well as single deckers, but I did notice something that was quite interesting. Notice how for single deckers it's like straighter along this section, whereas for the bendy buses it is more slanted. So this means that ideally when you're turning a bendy bus, you don't want obstructions along like this side of the road that could impede the bendy bus's turning. So I will be attempting to explain, like just simply explain why 302 has no issues using bendy buses, whereas 979 it would struggle a little bit. So 302, this is Choa Chu Kang Street 52. This is North 5. So 302 just turns left like this. As long as there are no obstructions along this side of the road, you're good to go. But then 979, if the road is clear, you would have no issues. Like this one isn't a solid divider or anything, it's just one line. So as long as there are no vehicles, it's still okay. But when there are vehicles over here, 979 bendy buses, they kind of have to struggle a little bit in order to like avoid hitting the vehicles like along this side of the road. So if you've noticed, everything that I'm saying here is with respect to this. I am not deviating or making up stuff on my own. It is just with respect to the test conducted in that video. And this is kind of the reason why they have trialed 3D2S on 979, but you know they are kind of hesitant to deploy it. I mean, Bukit Panjang ITH, the narrow roads inside there, it's a whole nother issue, but in this context, it is just not wise to put 3D2S because their turning radius is like absolutely horrible. It's like comparable to BYD K9 because those things, their turning radius is absolutely terrible. So a normal 3-axle double-decker bus, yes, it is much safer to do this turn using 3-axle DD as opposed to a bendy bus or 3D2S. But that's only for the right turn. For the left turn, you can just use bendy buses as per usual. Because everywhere you go, I have seen people trying to perpetrate this myth that, oh, single deckers, they turn better than double decker buses, and double decker buses, they turn better than bendy buses. Well, I'm just here to tell you that this is not true, and it depends on the bus model and not necessarily always the type of bus. Yes, you can use this as a general comparison, but the truth is actually a lot more complicated than this. So how I would actually say it is, so the truth is actually a lot closer to this. Not 100%, but a lot closer to this. And then sometimes, as I've showed you with the Choa Chu Kang North 5 and Street 52 example, these two sometimes they swap places with each other depending on the road shape. Every road is shaped differently, and it is not always the case that, oh, bendy buses turn better, 3-axle double-decker buses, 12 meters, they turn better. It just depends on the road. And as I've said before, you can have buses that just have awful turning radius. BYD K9, it turns a lot worse than a typical 3-axle DD. And again, model dependent, not necessarily dependent on the type of bus. And then I've talked about this before, but even within Bendy buses itself, A24s, they typically turn better than 0405Gs. And that is because the trailer section of an 0405G is much shorter than in front. Whereas A24, the trailer and the front section are more or less the same length. So this one, the pivot is over here and it would turn better naturally. Okay, maybe I shouldn't draw them as lines. It is much easier to visualize when you have like blocks like this. You can see that the front is actually kind of a burden when it comes to 0405Gs, whereas this one is like more or less equal in length. So this one turns better. So this just goes to show you that yes, you can have a general trend, but then it still depends on the individual bus model. That's what I'm trying to say. Even for this, I can actually apply it to somewhere else. So let's not talk about 979, let's talk about 976. And this one has been made publicly known already. And it isn't Choa Chu Kang North 5, it is Bukit Panjang Ring Road. And then this one is Segar Road. And this one over here is Fajar Road. So they are saying that because of this lane over here, they are unable to deploy like 12-meter double-decker buses on 976. They can only use single deckers. Again, the logic is exactly the same. So enough of that. I am gonna be reacting to the comment section of admin's video. And keep in mind, this video was made like 4 years ago. And the comments are also made more or less around that period of time. So this is not to like, trying to shame any commenter for getting things wrong or anything. That's not the whole point of it. Because again, everybody is entitled to their own opinion and it's completely fine. I'm just here to review the comments and point out what is factually correct and what isn't. So let's look at the first two comments. So the one at the top is talking about education of people and encouraging them to move to the upper deck even though it's less than like 5 stops. So as usual, they are entitled to their own opinion, but I'm just telling you that objectively this would never work out in real life. I've talked about this in my other videos before. You can check out my previous videos. But to sum it up, I've always been saying that if it's less than 5 stops, it is completely impractical to force people to move up. It's not even about like education or like encouraging. It's just a simple fact that if you're taking the bus, a double-decker bus, for less than 5 stops, you would have absolutely no incentive or reason to go up. It's just that simple fact. And not just that, you're gonna be dealing with an aging population in the future, and the thing is that forcing people to go up is just not good. Okay, but with that being said, let's move on to the next comment. Okay, so the reason why I liked this comment is not because of this part. This part is completely wrong, and I'll just tell you right now that capacity wise, like on average, 18-meter bendy buses, they can carry about 140, whereas double deckers usually carry around 130. But it depends on bus model. And different bus models, they have different seating configurations. I'm not really going to go into it, but basically, if you're dealing with Citaro C2G or like Volvo B5LH, at the near side, there is always this like cabin which takes up space. You're not able to stand there or put seats there because it's just a solid so-called wall. Okay, but again, this is just to show that yes, there are some cases whereby a double-decker bus can actually carry more than a bendy bus. I've even talked about how Japan's like Hino or Isuzu bendy buses, they don't do well when it comes to overall carrying capacity, along with the fact that in Japan you're not allowed to stand on the articulated section, the turntable section of it. So there are lots of factors that affect the overall carrying capacity of a bus, and this is like outright wrong. It is not always the case. But this comment, everything else that they have said is correct. Like I've been talking about this, and when you continue to record evidence, you have to keep in mind three things: dwell time at the bus stops, and you would also have to maybe take a few pictures of how empty the upper deck is. That's another thing that you might want to take note of. And the thing is, you have to do it on the same bus service so that it's a fair comparison. And you would also have to take note whether it's like off peak or peak hours, basically the time of day, and then whether it's a weekday or a weekend. So these are all the things that you have to state if you want to record evidence. And once again, it is not the entire organization that is against bendy buses. It is just that one person. I have been telling you this like many times already. So they are able to understand the better, able to have a better understanding of the importance of bendy buses in feeder services. Yeah. So this comment is like more or less correct. The next comment, sometimes the elderly, they go to the upper deck, and if they alight, they will walk slower than normal age people. Okay, but basically if you're disabled or you're like elderly, you shouldn't even be going up in the first place. So yeah, but I get what this comment is saying. Are only used for CBD areas, correct. CBD, they should make mix bendies on peak hours and DDs for non-peak hours. So just to point out, this is a valid point. But the thing is, okay, personally, I do not agree about this, like, mixed fleet nonsense. Just know, if let's say 184 uses bendy buses, it should use bendy buses and it shouldn't even be using a single double-decker bus. So, but again, this is just my opinion. If you can somehow prove to me that this sort of like mixed fleet arrangement works, then okay, I will accept it. Cause for me, it's like, let's say you want to put bendy buses on 154. I wouldn't be like, oh, you should just put them during peak hours. I would be like, let's just convert the entire fleet to bendy buses instead of double-decker buses. And that's kind of the reason why I've talked about this before, but 154, you can use bendy buses, but it's not like the biggest priority because you would have to like replace every single double-decker that's like already on this bus service. And then they go on to say that LTA should retest double-deckers on airport-bound services. Okay, this part is something that I disagree with. So this one, the problem actually lies with Changi Airport Group, them being stubborn and stuff. But even if you allow them, like, is it Terminal 2? I think one of the terminals, like the departure hall, like there is like some restriction. I don't know if it's like height or turning restriction, but I don't think they should retest it.